In the next few minutes, you're going to understand something the tabloids aren't telling you. You're going to see how King Charles is quietly remaking the monarchy from the inside out, why Sarah Ferguson was suddenly pushed out after decades of being tolerated, what this really means for Prince Andrew's future, and how this single move could affect Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie in ways no one is prepared for. By the end of this video, you'll know the playbook Charles is using to protect the crown, who's safe, who's expendable, and why Fergie just became collateral damage in the most ruthless royal cleanup we've seen in years. So listen closely, because if you've ever wondered how power really works inside the royal family, this is it. This is the real version. Not the fairy tale. Not the PR. The strategy. King Charles has made his decision. And it's brutal. Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, the woman who somehow managed to stay in royal proximity for nearly 30 years after a divorce, has effectively been pushed out. Not shuffled. Not quietly retired. Pushed out. No royal residence. No permanent base. No return to the inner circle. And it didn't happen by accident. It happened as part of a wider move, one that also hits Prince Andrew right where it hurts. Let's start there. Here's what's actually happening. Behind the scenes, King Charles has initiated a formal, deliberate, legally buttressed process to strip his brother, Prince Andrew, of almost everything that made him royal in the eyes of the world. Not just the headlines. Not just the patronages we already knew about. We're talking about the style, the honors, the trappings, the small invisible signals of rank that the royals care about more than anything. The things the public forgets, but the palace never does. Andrew is being reduced to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Read that again. Not His Royal Highness. Not the Duke of York front and center. Just Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. A name that technically connects him to the family, but strips away the aura. That is not a cosmetic change. That is a legacy eraser. And it doesn't stop with the name. He's being forced out of Royal Lodge, the Windsor estate he's occupied since 2003. The place that made him feel untouchable. The place Fergie moved into with him in 2008, even though they were divorced. The place that symbolized for a lot of people that Andrew still had protection and that Sarah Ferguson could still orbit the royal world under his umbrella. That illusion is over. Andrew is being relocated to a smaller, more modest property on the Sandringham estate. Notice the wording, modest. Notice the location. Not central, not Windsor, not London, not close to the nerve center. Controlled. Contained. Managed. But now look at what happens to Sarah Ferguson. This is where it turns from a brother being disciplined to a message being sent. Because while Andrew is being rehoused, privately funded by the king, by the way, Sarah Ferguson is being told to make her own arrangements. No official royal residence. No joint consideration. No, you've been around for decades. Let's find you something. Nothing. She is being treated not as an in-law, not as the mother of two royal princesses, but as what the monarchy now considers her to be, a non-working, non-core, non-essential, once tolerated outsider. On paper, the justification is clean. She's not a current member of the royal family. She's divorced. She has no official role. But come on. That's the surface. Underneath it is the real message. If you are attached to scandal, you are not coming with us. If you have brought tabloid heat to the firm, you are not part of the slimmed-down monarchy. If you've coasted on access, that era is over. This is bigger than Sarah Ferguson. This is Charles building a firewall. You can almost see the strategy meetings. The king has made it clear since taking the throne that he wants a streamlined monarchy. Fewer working royals, fewer hangers-on, fewer people using royal status to do private deals, fewer distractions. That's not just about saving money or optics. It's about survival. Because the monarchy, right now, is in a different era. The Queen could absorb scandal because she was the institution. Charles can't. William can't. The younger generation definitely can't. One bad story now travels the world in minutes. So, what does Charles do? He cuts weight. And when you cut weight, you don't just remove the obvious problem. You remove anything attached to it. That's why this feels so harsh toward Fergie. Because for years, the royal family tolerated her. She and Andrew divorced in 1996. It was messy, it was public, it was embarrassing. The toe-sucking headlines. The money problems. The pay-for-access scandal. The endless debt stories. Any other royal ex-wife would have been erased. But somehow, because she stayed close to Andrew, because she stayed on decent terms with the Queen, because she was good with the girls, because she never fully went away, she was permitted. Not embraced. Not adored. Permitted. She attended family events. She was at Balmoral. She spent Christmases. She was in and out of Royal Lodge like it was still 1994. It was an unconventional setup, but it worked for them. But that was the old royal era. That was the era of let's just not make a fuss. This is the era of if you embarrass the crown, you don't get to live off the crown. And remember, this is happening in the shadow of Andrew's scandals, the lawsuits, the settlements, the disastrous TV interview that pretty much torched his public image forever. Even though Andrew has denied wrongdoing, the damage was done. The monarchy doesn't need to prove guilt. It just has to calculate risk. And in that calculation, Andrew is a problem. Anyone linked to Andrew is a problem. Anyone who appears to benefit from Andrew is a problem. That's why Fergie is being frozen out. Not because she did something new this week, but because the king is saying, the era of indulging people for sentimental reasons is over. The monarchy survives by cutting loose liabilities. Even long-term ones. Even former daughters-in-law. Even people with sympathetic public images. Now, here's what most people aren't thinking about, the daughters. Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie. They are still HRH. They are still the granddaughters of Queen Elizabeth II. They are still blood princesses. And, according to insiders, the king wants to shield them from the fallout. That's why their titles aren't being touched. That's why they aren't being dragged into this mess. Because Charles knows something crucial. Punishing the children for the father's scandal will turn public opinion. And right now, he cannot afford to lose the York girls. They're connected to the younger royals, they have public goodwill, and they've largely stayed out of trouble. But what happens when they see their mother effectively kicked out of the royal nest? What happens when they realize their father was at least given a place to live, and their mother was not? That creates tension. Private tension. And palace tension always leaks. That's why this story matters. Because it's not just a housing issue. It's not just Fergie has to move. It's a signal about who is considered real royal family and who is considered an accessory. Andrew, even disgraced, is still blood, still the king's brother. He gets something. Sarah, divorced, controversial, once too close to scandal? She gets nothing. And that nothing is loud. Now, let's zoom in on the mechanism because this is the part that shows you exactly how Charles is going to run his reign. He could have gone nuclear. He could have gone to Parliament to abolish the Dukedom of York, to strip Andrew of the title entirely. That would have been public, loud, messy, and it would have opened the door to MPs and the media asking, okay, if the king is stripping his brother, what about other royals? What about this case or that case?
Charles didn't want that.
He doesn't want royal discipline to become a public circus. So instead, he used the tools the crown already has. Royal prerogative. Quiet.
Precise.
Surgical. He consulted legal and constitutional experts to make sure everything is watertight. Honors stripped. Styles removed. Residences reassigned.